All right, so let me tee this up. Where could I do this? Let me do this over here out of the way. It's probably the best option I would suggest. Where are we? Oops, I'll do that. MDM, let's go over here. And there we go. All right, so let's zoom in on that. And get rid of that. Okie dokie. Okay, let's, right, I see. I'm in the wrong thing here. Okay. So Stephen's asking about conditional access in relations to devices and geo-blocking. So again, remember that conditional access it evaluates a number of different things. It evaluates whether the machine is compliant. It evaluates where the machine is logging in from. It evaluates whether the machine wants to access a certain application. So conditional access is not just one simple rule. It can take conditions from many locations. Some of that could be the device health. Some of that could be the device location. And you just simply have different policies to suit your requirements. And one of the standard policies I always would recommend is a policy that prevents logging in from outside the local country of origin. So again, you would set up a location-based policy to prevent login outside Australia. But in my case, I also have a conditional access policy which also ensures devices compliant. Now, the reason is because the way you get around a geo policy is you create a free VPN. So what the attackers are doing now to get around conditional access geolocation, they use a free VPN to log into an endpoint in Australia and then go in and log in and attack your systems. Now, the way to get around that is, again, you've got to set up compliance, which means the device has to be marked as compliant and in your network and not jailbroken to allow access to information. So my advice is that defense in depth, more policies are better. Geolocation on its own is not necessarily strong enough, I would suggest. I think you would need to have a device compliance policy as well as a geo policy as well as a number of other policies. So it's up to you what you want to choose, but you need to have multiple conditional access policies, I would suggest. So Curtis is asking whether the dumps of the flowcharts will be available to us to review. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I've got an hour or so, I suppose, to decide. So I'll see how I feel at the end of the day. What do you reckon? I'm open to any sort of suggestions or bribes that you may have to make that possible. So I will keep that. I'll hit the ball over to you in that court. So again, provide some incentive and then it might actually happen. Does Autopilot lock the device to the vendor? So Autopilot locks the device to the tenant. So you go and put the credentials, or sorry, the hash or the identifier into the tenant. It locks that device to that tenant. So if you want to move that device to another tenant, you need to move it out of Autopilot from the first tenant and put it into Autopilot in the second tenant. So the idea with the hash is it identifies that machine uniquely in the whole wide world. And that means the machine boots, checks in with the internet, finds that hash in this tenant, and then it's automatically associated with that environment. So it's that approach. So if you do need to move them between tenants, you will have to move the hardware hash between the tenants. What is the tenant? The tenant is where the users live, where the licenses are, where Microsoft 365 is. All the endpoint.microsoft.com stuff I've been showing you so far is the tenant. That's where all the information lives. So again, if you go into Autopilot, okay, so I've logged into the tenant. This is the tenant. I've logged into the tenant, and if I go into devices, if I go into the windows, go into the Windows enrollment, go into the devices. These are the devices that the tenant knows about. So the tenant is the environment that contains the users, the groups, the files, the devices, the information. Okay, so if you're not familiar with what a tenant is, you need to go out and do some reading about what that basically is. Any other questions? All right, so to finish off for today, what we need to think about is that we've now got basically a situation where we have many, many logs from many, many different locations coming in. So we're going to have in here our devices. Okay, we're going to have our Azure AD logs, right? So we're going to have our we're going to have our logins and log outs and all that sort of stuff. We're going to have our Exchange mailboxes, all the emails, good, bad, indifferent, and whatever. We're going to have our file access. We're going to have, any alerts that are generated here. Okay, so we're going to have lots and lots of information or events coming into this top level here. So if we consider that we've got, 1 million plus events coming into this environment, that's a lot of data to go and look through. Now, I would suggest to you that, 95% of these events, okay, are basically, if anything, they're going to be false. Right? There's going to be stuff that you don't need to worry about. But if you are going through 1 million plus logs, or your staff are going through 1 million plus logs every day, you're doing the hard work, right? Really what you should be doing is you should be saying, well, I need to basically have the machine go through the events and tell me if I need to worry about something. So the machine should be doing the work at the top level. The next level down is going to be policy. So this is where you as a human would go in and say, okay, if you see this event, then take this action. So in here, we're talking about DLP, we're talking about Azure Information Protection, we're talking about, compliance policies for devices and so on. So what we're doing is we're being a bit smarter about it. We're saying, okay, if you see this, this, and this, or you see this, take this action. We're using the policy to make decisions based on the events. We're not reviewing the events, we're using the policies. An even smarter approach is to use something like Cloud App Security. Microsoft Cloud App Security allows you to, again, do even more sophisticated alerts. So, for example, one of the MCAS alerts that I have is if a global administrator logs on to the tenant successfully, but from a location that is outside a known IP address, like an IP address that is not already defined as a corporate known home office IP address, then generate an alert and take this action. So that means that if the global administrator login gets stolen, it's going to be used typically on an IP address outside my home network, and I want to know about that. I want to get an alert. I want to be able to track that. So again, I'm using multiple events here, multiple indicators to make intelligent decisions. Now, at the top of the tree here, right, is where you want to be operating as a human being. Humans have the most benefit when they're working with filtered specific information. So instead of starting with 1 million plus records, because we've used filtering here, we're probably down to 100 records that we need to review as humans. Okay, that's a far better ratio than trying to go through 1 million, and you're going to make all sorts of mistakes. Now, the way that we achieve this is we use machine learning and AI and the technology to go through these events, individual events, convert them to incidents, and then determine whether we should be worrying about them. Are they things that we need to action on? Now, the good news here is I would suggest, and this is what we'll talk about, I would be strongly using something called Azure Sentinel. Azure Sentinel is going to allow you to digest all of those events and then make intelligent decisions about that. So the easiest way to do it, rather than kill you by PowerPoint, which we probably don't want to do on a Friday afternoon, is to show you a working in anger Azure Sentinel. So this is Azure Sentinel that is looking over, at the moment, 34,000 events, right? So individual events now, and it's basically telling me what I need to worry about here over on the right. Now, how did this work? Well, what I do is I connect up my data sources. If we go through here, you'll see there are Azure data sources. There are Office 365 data sources, Defender for Endpoint. So remember, we talked about how we had, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Defender for Endpoint, this integration. Well, these signals are going to feed into this capability here. So all of this information here is basically fed into this large data lake. So if we have a look at Office 365, let's open the connector page, and what it's bringing in are the Exchange, SharePoint, and the Teams logging information directly into this area. If we look on the left, you'll see the amount of information that has brought in those individual events in there. So it's bringing that information in. Now, that information on its own doesn't provide a huge amount of benefit. What we need to do is we need to run some analysis. So we do that with analytics. So the analytics here are basically queries. So if we go in and have a look, let me find one here which has got the query listed in it. So here's the query here on the right-hand side. What it's doing is it's running this query on a scheduled basis across all of that data that I've imported, and it's going to tell me whether I need to worry about anything. All right, so all it's doing is looking at the data, running a query, and if it's positive, then it will flag something that I need to go and have a look at. Now, that happens on a regular scheduled basis. That will give me this overview here, and it will tell me of anything that I need to go and investigate. So over here, you'll see I've got high, medium, and low. So let's go and have a look at this high one and see what it refers to. So you firstly see here that it's now aggregated multiple events together. Right, so this is an incident being multiple individual events. Let's have a look at this high level one here. So you'll see here, this is a failed login. You'll see that if I go into the entities, it's going to tell me, okay, this is the account that it was, and there was the failed from 2 IP addresses. So if I select that first IP address, it's going to be able to go out and tell me, okay, where is this IP address actually located? So in a moment, it's going to tell me it's coming from Brisbane. All right, so then if I go back to here and look at this other one, my guess is that this will probably be from Melbourne. We'll see where this comes from here. All right, so it doesn't give me, oh yeah, South Bank, there you go, perfect. Do I know my IP addresses or what? So at this stage, I can now make a decision. What I can do is I can go in and investigate it further. So I'm going to get this graphical, this security incident graph, and I'm going to be able to drill into any of these entities here, get more information. You'll see that it's come from Cloud App Security. All right, and I can go in and get details, and I can expand these options out further. Right, move these around the screen to get more information, zoom in, zoom out. I can also go in here and look at related alerts. Okay, I can look at any related to the IP address. So I get this graphical capability to go in and investigate that if I want. Now, what I can do here is I can say, you know what, I'm going to own this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this incident out. All right, so I'm going to go in here and say, look, it's closed. And I'm going to say that, yeah, it was suspicious activity. So I'll close that out. And again, I can put more details. You'll see I can put comments and stuff over here if I want to. And then if I refresh that, you'll see that that has now gone away. And there's another one that I have to go in here and deal with. So I can basically look through all that information quickly and easily. Now, what I can also do is that's what's happening on a scheduled basis here, right? So this is doing a schedule, running scheduled queries. But let's say I want to look at it right here, right now. So what I can do is if I go into hunting, you'll see in my hunting, you'll see I've got 171 queries. So it's the same sort of concept. But what I can do here is I can select individual queries or groups of queries, and I can run those on demand. So think of this as on-demand hunting. But if you notice at the top here, I've got a button here that says run all the queries. So this is now going to run 171 individual queries across every single piece of data that it has at this point in time and tell me whether there is anything that I have to go in and examine or worry about. Right? Show me any other tool on the market which basically, will basically do that. Right, so it's found 3 things at this stage I need to go and have a look at, or again, match the query. So I can go in and examine those in more detail. So that's running an ad hoc query. Now, we can also use something called workbooks here. So workbooks basically are a dashboard, think Power BI display of the information. So if we go in here and have a look at Exchange Online, let's view the workbook. You'll see that this effectively is a Power BI style dashboard. I've got the ability to go in here and customize this. So let's make this the last 30 days, say, and I can go in and change the activities. You'll see here, I can go in and select from all the different activities. I get quite a significant amount of information available to me. And if you have a look, I've got 32 workbooks in play, and there are 113 that I could take advantage of. So not only have I got the capability to query the data on a regular basis, I've also got the ability to query the data on an ad hoc basis, and now I can also present that data in a Power BI dashboardy style environment here. Now, what I can also do is that I can consume what's known as threat intelligence feeds. So there are businesses out there that will provide a known list of bad IP addresses that are in botnets and bad URLs that are used in spam campaigns and phishing campaigns. And I can ingest those data feeds into my threat intelligence environment, and I can then look across all of the data that has been imported, here it's IP addresses, and see whether any of those match any of the logs that have been coming from my data sources. So if a device is being queried from an IP address which is known to be on a botnet or responding to a botnet, I would see this appearing here, and then I can go in and take action on that. So again, this is looking through almost 100,000 known bad threat indicators that are out there, and it's doing that in an automated, updated manner every single day. So it's getting that new information and checking my environment. I don't have to worry about anything. I just have to go and look at this, and it will tell me whether there is anything that matches in that environment. So that is what I can also do. I can pull external signals from outside my environment as well as inside my environment. Now, what I can do is if I want to, I can go in here and query specific items. So I can go in here and query a particular user. So in this case, let me look at myself here in this tenant. So now we're beginning to bring all the logging capability for that one user into a central location. So it's going to pull in all the data, right, that refers to that individual user or that individual item. Now, if I have my devices configured with Defender for Endpoint, that logging, that data is then reported up into this portal. So I can not only look at users, I can also look at devices as well and look at them over a period of time, display them in workbooks, query them ad hoc, and whatever. So again, that's under the entity behavior option here. So the really cool thing about this is that, again, if we go in and have a look here, let me just go in, and so you know I'm not. So if we go back here and have a look, right, so I'm pulling in, you know, say 50,000 logs, events a day. All right, so let's go out and have a look at how much that's going to cost. So let me go in and have a look at my subscriptions. Have a look at, and again, it does vary on how much data you're ingesting and what logs and whatever, but I've got a significant amount, you know, coming in here. So let's go to cost analysis. Let's go in here and make this, wait for this to resolve itself. Come on. And let us change this to cost by resource. And let us look at the previous invoice, which was basically all of August. Okay, so if I scroll down here and find the location that it is, where is it? It is, no, not that one. Where are we? It's called, where are we? Let me see if I can do, it's called, what have we got here? Here it is, Log Analytics Workspace. So if we have a look at that, okay, so you can see here that across my environment here, it's basically costing me, you know, this sort of money to analyze all the machines that I have. So that is sending signals up. Now, if we go back and have a look here, go into Azure Sentinel, what you'll notice is I have two Azure Sentinels here, right? So this is using something called Azure Lighthouse. So I can now monitor two different tenants for all the signals that are coming in. So this is my production tenant. This is where most of the costs are. So you'll see that that tenant is ingesting 800,000 to 1 million logs a day. And it's letting me know what I need to go and have a look at. So this is basically the screen that I look at first every single day to see what's going on in my environment, do reports, see what I need to worry about. And this is the tip of the triangle there. I don't have to go and look at all this individual information. I can just view basically a summary and then take actions from there. So if we go in, and just to give you an idea here, let me go in and just show you the amount of detail or the amount of data. So this tenant is sucking in around 80 gigs of data. That's 80 gigs of event data per month. All right. So for the time saving it provides me, it is cheap, right? For what it does, it is cheap. Now, if we go out and have a look at the other tenant that we've got here, now this one here is basically sucking in a lot less data. And what we're able to do here is if you go in and do a search for Azure Sentinel pricing, what we can do here is you will find that down the bottom here, right, so if you scroll right down the bottom here, you will notice that there is an option here, and oh, maybe I've got to go back up. Sorry, I've got to select pricing. Where are we? Sorry, pricing. If we select pricing, okay, and then go right down the bottom, hopefully if they haven't changed it, which they might have. Okay, so what it would normally say here is that what services can I bring in for free? So if you bring in things like your Office 365, your Teams, your SharePoint, your Exchange, the ingestion of that basically is free. So what that means is that you can set up an Azure Sentinel environment that just monitors your cloud services for, a couple of cents a month, right? It's absolutely no cost at all. And then if you want to extend it and start connecting to and bringing in data from your on-prem environment, you can do that. This is what I do here. So if you go into the settings for my production environment, and let's go in and have a look at the workspace settings, and we go in and have a look at the agent configuration. So what I'm doing here with all the devices that I have in my production, you'll see that I'm bringing in the application logs, any errors, I'm bringing in the security net logon logs and also the system logs. I could bring in the warnings and the information if I wanted to. I'm also bringing in all the performance counters for those machines as well. So that's where that 80 gigs worth of data a month is coming in. Now, why do I do that? Well, the reason is that if we go and have a look here, what I can do is I can now go in and craft my own dashboards here, and I can see things like the CPU trends, I can see the disk space usage, I can create my own custom dashboards to show me exactly the data that I want. Now that data has come in because the devices are Azure AD joined, because those devices also have endpoint on them reporting their security basically into this data lake, which this analysis, Azure Sentinel, is sitting over the top of. Now, at its core, what I can also do if I want, I can go in here and I can run manual logs if I so choose. So, for example, if I pull up a query here, let's go in here and see where I am. So let's go into my area here. You'll see that I've got, this is a query, custom query. So let me just copy that and go back to that, location, post that query in. Okay, run that query. And that has now produced a graph. And what I can do is I can now pin that graph to a dashboard. If I want, I can export it. I can work with it in Power BI if I so choose. So you don't have to go out and invent the wheel here. You'll see under settings here. Whoops, just close that. All right, so one of the options that we do have here, if we go down and have a look here, is we do have the ability also, is to take advantage of the community. So there's a huge GitHub and environment where people are sharing information, sharing rules, workbooks, queries, automation. So I can actually do automations in here. So see there's an automation option as well. So the idea here to think about is that all of these devices that you've configured and brought into play here, what you want to be able to do, that's collecting a huge amount of data. But you need to move away from this fact of being alerted and trying to go through millions and millions of logs every day. You need to allow the machine to do the hard work for you. And the good thing about the Microsoft solution here, stack here, is all the integration factors that allow those events to be passed up to a tool like Sentinel, where you can just look at a simple dashboard and it will tell you whether you need to go and worry about looking this, worrying about looking at that. Now, the other good thing about Sentinel is it also provides the ability to extend your standard logging if you point all your data in that location. So, for example, by default in Microsoft 365 Business, most of the logs are maintained for only 30 days. So that's the maximum 30 days worth of logs. Okay, but if you implement Azure Sentinel, that will give you at least 90 days for free. All right, so again, it's very, very cheap for what it provides. And you can extend that quite easily using Azure Blob Storage if you do need to. So my recommendation here is when you think about device management, one of the big advantages is not just the capabilities of Endpoint Manager or things like Intune and so on. The big benefits here are around also the integration with Defender for Endpoint, with Sentinel, with Cloud App Security. It's one stack, it's one provider that will provide all this solution and give you these capabilities. It has built-in dashboards, it has the integration with Power BI, it also has the ability to do automation as well. So one of the things I've set up is the ability to run a Power Automate, Power Platform query and pull in all the information about my devices into a SharePoint, a SharePoint site. So if I again show you that, so if I pull this down here and go in and have a look at Power Automate, and we have a look at the automations that I've got in play here. So Darren, the answer is yes, you need to use Azure Lighthouse to do that. You can do multi-tenant management with Azure Lighthouse. So if I have a look at my flows here, you'll see that one of them I've got here is Secure Score. One of them here is vulnerabilities. So if I select that and just give you a quick overview of what's possible here. So this is basically a flow that I trigger manually. It will go out and get a login details from a secure score. It will then take that and push that into a SharePoint list. So that's basically all that's required to do that. Now, what does that look like? So if I go into SharePoint, and I think it's in my test site here. So if I go into test site here, we should find that there's a list there called vulnerabilities. There it is. And you'll see here that this is now showing me basically all the vulnerabilities. So it's pulled in the information from my Defender for Endpoint. And now what I can do is I can say, you know what, show me group them all by severity. So now I can see which ones are critical across which machines. I can now group by the software. So I can go in here and say group by software name. So I can now see that I have to do this for 7-zip. I now need to see I can do this for Chrome and so on. Now, if you're really smart, you'll run a flow process in an automated way that goes across all the tenants that you have access to, pulls all that into your own partner tenant and displays it in the SharePoint list like here. And then you can go and assign tasks, you can integrate it, you can Power BI, you can do basically whatever you want. So once again, one of the big benefits here is don't think of the the device management when it comes to Microsoft as purely being endpoint manager or purely being an endpoint, a compliance policy or a MAM or an application deployment policy. Do not think like that. You need to step back and realize that we've got the capability to integrate with Power BI, with Azure Sentinel, with Power Automate, with SharePoint, with all of the other tools here in this environment. Everything that you need is here. Everything that you need to create your own unique IP and stand out from everybody else who's just buying generic tools off the shelf that do the same thing and provide no variation and no differentiation. There's the opportunity for those people who want to put in a bit of effort and develop their own dashboards, their own capabilities, their own automation. And you can do it all within a single environment, securely, locked down, audited, tracked, compliant as you need it. All right. So with that, basically, that's probably all the content that I have for you, out of the time. I'm happy, obviously, to answer any questions that people may have left over. I'll give you a little bit of extra time back for a Friday afternoon. I do appreciate the investment that you have made staying with me. I know it's difficult in the afternoon, especially later in the week. We'll thank, obviously, George and Ingram for the opportunity to present you with this information. I hope that it's been of value to you. I hope that you'll be able to take something away from here and look at implementing it in your own environment. If you haven't done any device management yet, you have the capabilities within your own partner tenant, okay? And you can turn on these facilities. If you've got Action Pack or Better, you're going to have these. Turn it on for yourself, have a play with it. Same thing with Azure Sentinel, same thing with Cloud App Security, same thing with all of this. It is available to you. You can also spin it up in a demo tenant if you want and have it outside your environment to play with and muck around with. And again, the easiest way to start learning this stuff is get in and start doing it. Don't forget to lean on Ingram for assistance, especially with autopilot, but for anything that you're looking to do. And also, if you want to have more training around specific items that we've mentioned, please don't forget to mention that to Ingram. We do have an advanced Microsoft 365 session coming up, I think in November, that you can register for, that will look at some of the more advanced features of the E5 SKUs. So again, something around Defender for endpoint, but we'll also, be talking more things about, e-discovery, Defender for Office 365 and the integrations that you can enable. But please be aware that, there is so much in this that you can do. You can use it to differentiate yourself, automate, stand out from the crowd, and be different. If you're doing nothing more than selling licenses, then you are no different from what a customer can buy on the web. You aren't differentiating yourself in any way, shape, or form for anybody out there. So the people that will be successful are those that can add value to their customers in a unique way and then begin to replicate and automate that in an easy way. The tools are there. You can build on a standard platform and then integrate that across and with other customers running Microsoft 365. So that's the big advantage that you have. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of partners do anything more than simple email, but the opportunity is there, and hopefully this has given you a little bit of insight to have a look at that today. All right, so thank you very much, Stephen. We have a hand in the air. Let me just have a look here. Okay, George wants to talk. Go for it, George.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending, and just as a reminder that these sessions, the recordings will be sent out. In the chat box right now, I'm just going to drop in our contact details. So if you need to reach out to us for any specific inquiries around product or licensing, use the general inquiries email. Our modern support team, which supports the modern workplace and Azure practices for Microsoft, phone number and email address are there as well. And I'd just like to highlight that the new commerce experience that's coming to Microsoft 365 and to Dynamics and the Power Platform, there's a website on the Ingram, there's a page on the Ingram website that goes through a new commerce experience in some detail, and there's some webinars and things you can watch and blogs and whatnot to keep up to date with all things to do with the new commerce experience, which will begin in March of next year. So with that, thank you to everybody, and thank you, Robert, again for a great session.
Thank you, George. So yeah, enjoyed that. Again, if you can take that away, hopefully, like I said, all the resources you've seen will make available to Ingram. They'll get them to you early next week, and watch out for that advanced session as well. I think that you'll be able to register for that as well. Thanks, Raymond. Glad to see that there was value there. Thank you, Darren. It's always good to know that people have received benefit from it. It's very difficult, as you can appreciate, to perhaps target this at the right level for people, but hopefully there was enough there for someone who didn't have a lot of experience, and also if you are a bit experienced, there was something in there for you as well that you could learn and take away. So hopefully it's hit the mark there. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Again, if you do have any questions, I'm happy to hang around, answer those. Again, you can come off mute if you want to do that. Again, appreciate all the thanks. Doesn't appear to be any questions coming through that we need to answer. All right, so hang on, we do have a hand up. Sasha, let me give you the ability to, yep, so you can unmute yourself if you want. Sasha.
Hello there, hi.
G'day.
Hello there, how are you doing? Good afternoon. Good. Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks. The presentation was fantastic. Learned a hell of a lot. Quite a lot to take in, but definitely be some great value we'll be able to get from this. So yeah, thanks again. I just had a question. I have been looking at Lighthouse, and I was just curious. Will that allow us at some point to be able to sort of have a more kind of global management over our sort of several hundred O365 tenancies?
So my advice to you in general, right? This is a general comment, right? My advice to you is not to rely on multi-tenanted focus from Microsoft, because Microsoft is an enterprise company. It's not an MSP company. Okay. So it's not going to provide you with MSP tools to do what is a single console. There's just not enough people. There's not enough money in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that said, Microsoft is improving the multi-tenant experience with Azure Lighthouse, with Microsoft 365 Lighthouse, which are both free, but are probably early on in their days at this point in time. And what we will find is you as MSP want it done one way, and another MSP wants it done another way, right? So again, Microsoft's going to try and hit the 80% down the middle. It's never going to do everything that you want. Now, again, it's going to improve, it's going to enhance, but I would suggest to you that if you're playing where the ball's going, and what I've been talking about, at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that you're doing as an MSP will be automated out from underneath you. Microsoft will do it. Other parties will do it. So, for example, a good example is what is stopping another MSP starting up a SOC service, a security operations center, using Azure Lighthouse and Azure Sentinel, and then selling that service and connecting it back to your customers, and then charging them a fee to monitor their security environment from a single console, their own single SOC Azure Sentinel. So that is the future, is what I'm saying. So my advice to you is those tools are here, those are coming. But if you sit back and say, I'm going to wait till they do exactly what I need or whatever, then it will be too late. The tools are already there, the capabilities are already there, but you would have to put in the work and, connect them up and do a bit of programming, a bit of automation yourself, okay, which I think progressive partners are doing. But if you're someone who wants to wait until you get that one dashboard that's already provided for you, I think you'll be out of business before that happens.
Fair enough. Thank you.
No problems. Any other questions? Thank you. Paul, any other questions? Thanks, John. Any other questions that people want to go with on the record? No? Okay, so what I'll do is thank you very much. Stop the recording.